It's October 22nd, 2022. I'm in this pattern. I'm on this section over here. I was watching the episode, it's E43 that the TV put on in a CBS Saturdays. The E43 being that I'm on the Avenue 43 is really interesting this morning. Especially that I grew up as a way. It's A-W-A-Y. Sometimes there's a space in it. Sometimes it's one word. It's on my driving abstract with the driver's license that the locals keep in records that are accessible, I suppose, in this whatever. So I don't know how one finds these things, but whatever. So I'm thinking this morning. I wake up and the thought pattern this morning in like a Starlink for whatever's going on, a controversial, and sci-fi, but real life, all in the same. I am thinking to myself about a dance, and I'm like, all right, so now the most words that the humans have used on some television, not face to face, but in a television, they use this word principle just recently as for a single dancer. And sometimes it's a male and a female dancer. One male, one female. They still call them principals. I don't have any idea what that requires to get to that level. I'm not even going there because those are just the pitfalls that humans use to sideswipe a conversation and take things in the wrong direction. So, like, zito on that one. So, silencio, perhaps. So, I'm thinking there is a dance, a very special dance, a very reputable dance company would know there's a single female, there's a single male, and they're supposed to dance together on the stage. That's the part that's been disrupted. I happen to have the word height of a rocket. Never applied for the Rockets. I'm 5'6". I qualify, but I'm not allowed to dance in a team, whatever that way. Or at least it's been the reroute. They didn't want me in whatever. So I didn't dance, not in a company, not anywhere. And certainly not at the same time like a Rocket cheerleading, but not like the professionals do in some primetime lingual, like linga, like I'm not going there. So I'm just not built into humanity the same way that the others are. I know it has special purpose, but it is like a principal female dancer for a principal male dancer, and we are supposed to do our private stage, private performance in whatever we're supposed to be doing. I do not know why this has turned out so public, or private public, I suppose. I don't know how to do it any other way, being that I've been in a series of rooms, and there's something this morning. So there is this theoretic that I have as the female theoretically, I'm supposed to have my own one-headed eagle. Then theoretically, there's a Siamese head of some form of bird that looks in either direction. And if there was a male, which there is, say, principal dancer for this staged event or world stage event, he is supposed to be with his set of eagles or birds or whatever. Theoretically, the female and the male, if born to, they have their own assignment of an eagle. And then there is the two-headed bird that is supposed to bring the unity and the simplicity of introduction of the female principal and the male principal, so they may have their respectable life walk together. That is how it's supposed to go. Especially at the turn of the century for which I arrived. And I don't know what happened to the Rockettes as the backup dancers to support my one female principal and the one male principal getting to the correct stage and having the correct respectable dance permanently. I am unaware of what transpired, but there are still Rockette line dancers that are supposed to perform in our honor, in our favor, and in our benefit in order to correct this separation of the two principal powers, the male and the female, that belong together as a couple. So now, here's what's transpired while the Rockettes or some other dance company opened up without my permission, and I'm sure it's without his permission. I don't know who took it upon themselves to open a separate company. Really, I don't. A different dance company? I have no idea. But here's what it looks like that they're alerting me on the See the BS this morning. In an area where my mother now has this arena that they built in the local area saying, "You the BS." Right, yeah, and 3 keys next to it. What a surprise. So at 1943, it has this commercial of a acknowledgement by 1776. It has an egg with the Union Jack of London. And then out of that egg, it births an American flag that looks like this, and it has a hand on it, on the handle. So that's one for people taking responsibility of what they've already done in the Starlink controversy, and Starling and Sterling being whomever they are the appropriate parties for. Then they have a story about oysters on breakwaters. This seems to be an environmental story. They mention a family, goes by the name of Saladino, in Staten Island. Different island than Long Island. We're separated by water. But the family exists in these areas and lands. Ransom Beach in Oyster Bay, just so environmental's crystal clear, still has Saladino's name on the sign for town supervisor of the Oyster Bay, where the Roosevelt Nationally Historic and Preserved Landmark Estate sits, as well as one of the schools I attended, which the president of the Catholic Church visited once in historic preservation of real live players of a very large network that were in the same building under the same roof as myself as I was going through these series of rooms and series of events that I can't explain all of them by myself. And I don't know where the birds that are supposed to protect me went. I don't know where my Rocket kickline team is. And I have not been brought successfully, permanently, to the principal male dancer that I'm supposed to be spending a life dance with. Instead, like I said, it looks like some alternate dance company opened some production. And there was a 1976 Jason piece of whatever. And it's become a real problem. So then at 45, at 26.28, Starlink controversy has an image only of, it looks like from the moon looking at the earth and one of the stratospheres. I don't have a proper word for it because I'm not in that line of intelligence. So it has like this purple haze over it. And I could fathom and speak on what it reminds me of for this paradoxical one-way conversation, but I won't. And then at 45.11, it has an image of Big Ben, which is the only landmark I know, and whatever I thought it was Buckingham Palace next to it. Again, I don't have my postcards from when I visited. The entire catalog book was taken from the residence, and I don't know where it is, whose hurt locker it is holding in. I don't know if they took that for their own surveillance, their own protection. I don't know, does that go to National Archives? Does that go to Avenue Q? Like, what lockup does that go to? Because now it's not in my possession anymore. And I don't have access to these landmark references that I visited along with my Heathrow regular ticket on the trip where they named me Hella, in whatever Viking resource that was, along with something that shared the North Sea with them. But that man knew that they had already taken out in New York all reference to the ancestry, the Vikings, lots of words he used and was very versed on. And I was trying to follow, but this was a whole new vocabulary that nobody spoke of in my house or in any of the rooms that I've ever really entered. I've looked to the TV producer land to bring me a show called The Vikings that I shared and watched with my children. And we rather liked it. We liked looking forward to the sagas and the epics and the love story between Lagertha and Ragnar and whatever they did there. So that happened. So now they open with this London Big Ben, and I just found out from the lettuce, whatever. I think they call that their parliament. Again, I'm not real clear on that because I don't know how any of their stuff works. I barely know what they're doing over here under this much whatever. But they have something called Jack Reacher. It's two brothers that grew up in Birmingham. He mentioned something about a changeling. He really didn't feel like he fit into his family. I don't really know what the Brits or the Great Beyond use this word changeling for. But between him and his brother, there was 15 years they mentioned. That kind of sort of reminded me of myself and Benjamin. Like, neither one of us feel like we really fit in around here. And it was always like I had his back, he had my back, or so I thought. And so raising him, it's like I was being raised at the same time I was raising him, trying to look for answers but keep him safe and protected and sheltered as best I could with limited access to the enemy that tried assassinating me, but not even telling Benjamin that part, because Benjamin just knew something was wrong with that side of the family with his whatevers. Because they always had so much anger and so much to say about me personally, and my children would let me know just how awful their rhetoric was when they would go visit. And I said, well, I don't, again, I get why they're doing it. They're just really bad people. No, I would just leave it at that, because they just are. I mean, like, your dad tried murdering me. I didn't want him to grow up with that in the back of his head. So I wanted him to really gain traction and footing for discerning out the evil amongst us firsthand. So, um, part of, I suppose, growing into being a man worth keeping around. So anyhow, so these two brothers from Birmingham have this Jack Reacher series. They call it Lee Child. I have a Lee Child. They named their Lee Child Andrew. I have named mine Daniel. This is incredibly important in a different part of the galaxy and universe outside of the human realm of reality, perhaps a world beyond world type of perspective, since I have a very localized, then a regional, and then a global purpose that goes on in this Starlink. What have they done, and what type of other dance company did they open? This is a real problem. So they mentioned something about a changeling. Then they go in at 1.01.59 Starlink piece. About 30% is damaged. I don't know what that is pertinent and relatable to. Then at 1.0906, they flash, just like they did at BBC for London, they flash WBBM Chicago, which mentions something about a PKL and something called pickleball, which now they've invited. I mean, like, again, there's something going on between SWAT, SWAT, Fire Country, and Blue Bloods. And I'm like, if they're firing the country here, that puts me under some form of martial law rule, which puts my life further into jeopardy, I would assume. Is that how they're trying to get this out of a tailspin or in a nosedive into the ground? I mean, there was framework and structure built here before this whole alternate movement and alternate dance company decided to keep me away from the principle I belong with and to at world stage, and send the rest of the life frame into some free fall with some stability factors trying to step up. But in that fight, they just open up like, it's just, I'm not even going into that. And then they mention something with Arnold Schwarzenegger, SNL from 1990s about Hans and Franz and Pump You Up. So that's what's on. Oh, and at 5.26, they mentioned this pickle ball. And they have special words, and one of those special words is Catching Fire by PKL. Now, I don't know how new sports are, whatever. Again, they've credited E43 CBS Saturday mornings on 10/22/22 for this. I don't even know if I should use it as a reference, because I mean, I'm wording over that that's what it is and those are the times, because that's what my notations had from what I experienced this morning. But there's serious, and at some point they also mentioned something about a crown jewel with this Lee child. Now, again, their reference is to Andrew Child. My real life field, I have reference to a Daniel Lee child. So, again, real world being what it is and the mysticism of humanity and how this part of the galaxy and the universe is trying to work. But my principal dancer, the solo dancer, has not been brought to the world stage properly and pronounced along with the male principal dancer I belong to and with. So I don't know how that works at humanity and at like effectuating the result that is required. Again, I'm at a loss for words at the moment in this field. Now, at 19.43 on this E43 CBS Saturday mornings, this is the commercial that they chose to put up. So there is a flag, and then an egg that's birthed this 1776, which in this area they use as the Independence Day, and where the Constitution and the Bill of Rights was birthed from in the democracy and the republic. And this is that egg reference with the handle on the flag. Again, I'm just one principal dancer, female, on this side, that at some point with an oil painting, just the toiling is done properly, had some whatever he called himself at the inside of the building, and then to the outside of the building was brought, I guess you could call him the principal male that I was supposed to be with for that meeting, just so we all align our stars properly and have a coach's update on from the field of New York. Some stuff's gone on. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't know who's involved. But I'm trying to pick up some of my pieces and send a very real message across the galaxy to find in like a message to who I was intended for in order to be brought back to a safe place. Since time just keeps dilating and it doesn't seem as though anything's getting better. And I don't know how to message any other way or who to reach out to for help. Now, in the eye of the storm, being this one they're referencing as Hurricane Sandy. They're showing this trying to use the oysters as an environmental protector and to break some of the storm surge.
Place where they remember the storm and are trying to prepare for the next one. Tanya, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Staten Island, one of New York City's 5 boroughs, was one of the places hardest hit by Sandy. Now, an innovative project run by the New York Governor's Office of Storm Recovery and slated to be completed in 2024 is offering a natural solution to storm protection by giving a small but mighty creature a very big role. Oh, yeah.
2024 is their date for this. I'm having biological issues in this field without proper doctor care and proper doctor intervention, because it seems like this alternate dance company that opened itself up without my permission, and I would assume without permission of the male principal dancer in this hyper bridge way of explaining things without getting into anything specific, knowing that I've been held in a series of rooms and dance was kept to a very minimal, and the respectable introduction period was with white gloves and an introduction into this by a group. So we had values, and while I was in this Glen way that could be referenced back onto throughout my life because I haven't changed, I was just as novice of knowing about humanity then as I am now.
Yeah. Off this Brooklyn dock, a short ferry ride from Lower Manhattan, thousands of oysters with a big future are quietly growing.
We did it! This is what we love, is seeing them grow out.
Katie Mosher is senior director at the Billion Oyster Project, a nonprofit that has restored 100 million oysters and counting all around New York Harbor.
They're now about 2 inches and they're reproductive. So that means that they can reproduce larvae that will spread out throughout the harbor.
But some of the
Again, I'm not going into theories and into expanding on that conversation because of where I am and the fact that there was a real serious something that took place that is still affecting this area and my own person, and it has rippling effects out in the universe and the galaxy as far as here to the great beyond and perhaps even somewhere else. I don't know. Now, I've heard London refer to their flag as a Union Jack. Yesterday, they referred to a singer, John Mellencamp, as a one-eyed Jack. No idea what that really means, but it looks like it has a Buccaneer reference to it. And I don't know any of his music really, but was transplanted and he was seated here in New York. And this is where he wrote from. He recorded his life frame, according to the story, in New York, same time frame that I've been here. So he would be a helpful resource in what he's seen as things have evolved, re-evolved, what have transpired. Or, I mean, again, it was like in 1978, it was a crime scene when I arrived. I mean, it was not a perfect world, but I had dance company and a principal with a team of Rockettes that were supposed to back us up for very respectable marriage and very respectable children. I was to bring in for him and myself. And that's been broken by I don't know what.
On CBS.
This morning, Lee and Andrew Child and the future of Jack Reacher. Reacher is one of the most famous characters in all of books. A gigantic ex-military cop turned wandering investigator and pugilist. Since Lee Child published his first Reacher book in 1990.
Pugilist, not a pariah. just so the turkey carcass that someone put in the Amazon jungle and had all the pariah come out and eat all the meat off the bones in some new, like, dance operative that destroyed the company or dance that I was principal and supposed to remain with. Again, I hear you throw these words out on the big board, but I just want the Rockettes, the kickline team, and the eagle that protects my back to know what happened on this side of the pond and that I'm still not okay.
1997, the series has sold more than 100 million copies. There have been movies starring Tom Cruise and now a TV show. But a few years ago, Lee Child realized he was running out of gas. So he hatched a plan to allow Jack Reacher to live on.
I find that interesting as well. They were running out of gas. Now, are those gas credits, tax credits? I don't know how they're reworking the pariah world based on the fact that they broke the bank, they broke the company, they broke the rules, and I still am living proof of it, as is the male principal, which now puts us in a precarious, dangerous situation, and we still have world stage work to do, and world stage knows we're missing, and world stage, I don't want to be in trouble with that part of stage, but I don't know when so much has been upstaged. And is it a bury? I mean, it feels like it's been some kind of rip current where I'm on a decline while other things are on some incline in the pariah territory.
You always started books on the anniversary of you getting fired.
But the thing is that in this pariah and broken dance company, there is very serious alcohol abuse and large area distilleries. And that is a conversation at world stage that needs to be had, except the correct principle, the two, my female and the male that I was set for, being in physical, like, loss of one another, and world stage knowing that we're not there. It not only opens the opportunity that they'll grow that industry and invite more dangerous things, making it harder to transition from, but there is real environmental concerns, and there also is very real global climate change concerns, amongst other things, as well as the locals' health concerns with so much chemical distribution being fumigated and major distilleries needing to scale back. But I don't know if their production has been ramped up. And now this causes a fight that becomes increasingly dangerous to even touch upon. So how in the world is one supposed to even resurrect that level of concern safely, as far as crown jewels of a territory, a local, a territory, and a global, whatever, within a life frame, so that when I leave this world, it is a better place and they're closer to the objective for the children that I leave, which other people are also having children. I get that. But speaking upon other people's children puts me more, the way my position works, it's not a good idea, so I don't. So this is where I'm stuck in this.
Well, it was the anniversary that I first sat down to write the first book, 1st of September.
Lee Child started.
That 1st of September also has a very 1976 in this new dance company that they opened up that I did not agree to.
Started writing Jack Reacher in his early 40s, after getting downsized out of his job in production in British television. His brother Andrew was his first reader.
Back then, Lee was out of work, and when he sent me the manuscript to read, I was terrified for two reasons. Because I thought, what if it's terrible? I'm the one who's going to have to go to my brother and say, sorry, your book sucks. Time to go and work at the grocery store.
He would, isn't he?
But then the other thing I was thinking was, well, if it does suck and no one will buy it, then what am I going to do? I'll have to send him food parcels, or, let him sleep in my spare room or something. So it was the most nerve-wracking read I've ever had.
Nerves were quickly calmed.
I have not read any of them. Again, there was a series of books that I read, but this was not one of them that anybody even brought to my attention. Nobody sent me as like a manuscript. Nobody sent me as like a, hey kid, heads up. Not like this looks like this, whatever, on some stuff that maybe you want to know about. Same thing with James Patterson, and a couple of other authors that I've seen just recently featured on the See the BS. Me just sitting here quietly observing the You the BS group and how they're orchestrated and illustrated themselves into some fabric of the cosmos in mysticism and mystique and mistake, because I know my one position's not correct, but not knowing why it's progressively getting worse and more dangerous, and essentially silencing me in the, I don't know what the pariahs are up to. Here's how they explain this.
27 books, 2 movies.
You're going to be wearing these cuffs on your way to prison.
Well, that is one magnificent prophecy, Mr. Reacher.
Just thinking maybe my brother told me about Blind Blake for a reason.
And an Amazon streaming series.
I guess I'll find everybody responsible and kill every last one of them.
But there was always going to be an end, right?
It infuriated me when you would get into a great series and then you would sense that the author was getting old or tired or running out of gas, running out of energy, and the quality fell away. And this thing that...
Gas, energy, or is it funding and someone to back them? In the dance company and pariahs always know that they're up to no good and that they've taken things in the wrong direction.
That you had relied on all these years was suddenly no good anymore. And so when I started writing, I made myself a promise. I would never do that. I would try and look ahead and sense the point where I was going to run out of energy and get out rather than disappoint my readers. That was the plan. But the readers love Reacher.
It brines up the beans automatically and then...
Lee said he had a running fantasy where he could drink a magic potion and turn 15 years younger. Thankfully for him, Andrew is 14 years younger. Both are writers. Andrew has written 9 thrillers under the brothers' given last name, Grant. Both were deeply impacted by a difficult childhood in England.
I felt like a fish out of water in my family. I was completely different than anybody else, literally to the point where I assumed I was a changeling, mixed up at the hospital and the wrong kid brought home. And I lived with that feeling for, probably 15, 20 years until Andrew was born and then developed enough tiny personality of his own as a toddler. I suddenly realized, no, wait a minute, there is something about this genetic thing. He is like me.
And for me, it was the same experience, except looking in the other direction, because I had exactly the same feeling of being a fish out of water. And so when I would look and see that he was like me and he had escaped and was living a normal life, it gave me hope.
Yeah. Did you ever imagine you'd take over Reacher?
Not in a million years, no. I mean, when Lee suggested it, it was an absolute shock.
Was this was your secret plan, like long before you told him?
It was a developing plan, yeah.
In 2020, the first double byline, Reacher, came out. The Sentinel.
That's how I feel about my son. I have 4 of them. I have a deep appreciation of all 4 of them for completely different pieces and parts on where I think that they will fit in the world, if given the correct opportunity and if balance is restored. But here we are.
About to be released, the 3rd team effort called No Plan B. By now, Andrew does most of the writing. And though he plans to keep what has made the famously stoic, anti-technology Reacher character so appealing, he does say he wants to bring him into a slightly more modern future.
Everybody knows Reacher, they know what he's about, and they don't want that to fundamentally change. We don't want Reacher becoming a tree-hugging vegetarian, but at the same time, you've got to make it different enough to keep it interesting.
There's so many thrillers that are being written constantly.
And now is that like supposed to be this brain trust for the child that America is or was supposed to be? I'm just curious, speaking at different levels of dance companies, just because there is production, there's executives, there's directors, there's all sorts of pieces linked into this. But there is a very specific principal who has, or supposed to have, very specific eagle and like rocket kick line. I mean, it was a way for a reason of protection, so it was easy transport into respectable whatever. I don't know what happened. Now here, going back to that breakwater and the oysters, and that one name that was on Ransom Beach in the area of the Roosevelt estate, still there as a town supervisor, and turns out on a different island in the local area, local enough. Because like if we go by telephone company standards, I guess they technically would have been region within the Bell Atlantic region between Staten Island and Long Island, technically. So and then territorial, and then you go long distance. That's how the phone company used to be set up before it went digital and dropped to just one bill, one number, and nobody has any idea how the phone company works any longer. That is really frightening.
To see the $107 million work in progress.
They've been designed to kind of be these interlocking woven structures of rocks, and as the waves approach from this direction, they crash into these structures before they crash into the shoreline and structures on the shoreline.
And do the oysters also help with the mitigation of the waves?
So the oysters will play a part in it. So eventually the oysters will kind of settle on this rock structure. Typically, oyster larvae just kind of float throughout the harbor. And in this area, they don't really have anything to land on and grow. The idea is that the living breakwaters provide that, and then that oyster growth will just make them more robust structures that are living.
Rosemary, what did this area look like right after Sandy?
This dock here lifted and made their way into the window.
Rosemary Saladino runs the family-owned Marina.
Now, I don't know this Saladino, but let's just make her incredibly famous for my story. Thank you to whoever found her. Because there is another Saladino that I don't have a face for. I don't know what he looks like, but he's on a sign as somebody important in Long Island on a town supervisor on a Ransom Beach. Just saying. It has significance with where my life frame has taken me.
Cafe, a Staten Island staple for over 40 years. But 10 years ago, surging floodwaters from Superstorm Sandy.
Just like Brady has one of those like Brady Bunch names. Like I might not have a face for it, but it's an incredible piece of local, regional, and territorial history. I have no idea if it is a global expansion like, again, I don't know any Brady's on a personal basis that I can reach out to. I've met 2 in my life that I know of. Only 2.
Sandy, swelling up to 10 feet high, decimated the Harborside restaurant.
The water surged in enough to push all the furniture. These boats here, most of them all got pushed to the street.
Her family's life work transformed into a pile of rubble.
We prepared for a hurricane, sandbags covering the windows, moving furniture, but the devastation was something that we never imagined that would have happened.
Saladino rebuilt with the Phoenix-like resilience New Yorkers are famous for.
That's up.
But she's grateful the government has projects in place to help weather the next big storm better than the last. How does it make you feel that they are building something that is focused on Staten Island?
No, I think that's awesome. And since we're a small island and sometimes we get forgotten, but I think that's a great thing that we're not getting forgotten on that.
What makes them unique?
A breakwater itself is not necessarily a new piece of infrastructure, but what makes the living breakwaters unique is that they've been designed with kind of structural modifications that help promote habitat. Designed for juvenile fish to find refuge in the structures. They've been designed for oyster restoration in the future.
Designed to not only protect Staten Island from the next superstorm, but to also offer a new model for fighting climate change that gives nature a starring role. The living breakwaters are the result of a national competition launched after Sandy, challenging landscape designers, architects, urban planners to come up with new solutions to storm protection. And many believe it is through this kind of creative collaboration that we will continue to imagine new solutions for the...
See, now, one would think that that sounds like a really great idea unless you're in the field and you see just how much global expansion has polluted my local area, my regional area, and it is now becoming like a major concern. Like, there is just so far I want to push this, like, let's get everybody involved, especially considering that this new dance company that keeps singing this melodic verse is the pariah that broke up my principal dance with the correct male principal I belong to. Or belong with.
Big superstorm.
It's a win-win.
Right.
Yeah, everybody. Where's the negative?
Exactly, because we know when it comes to superstorms, it's not...
Yeah, see, like, naturally, they're just not wired because they're in this and they think they're already benefiting and they don't want to lose benefits. Yeah, got that. Okay. So I'm here. I'm the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Everything's been taken away. It's been getting worse. And some real serious, traumatic and tragic, frightening stuff that's not typical America, very anti-America, has happened to my person. And I'm just trying to find my bearings straight. Because if you're driving in a vehicle and one of your bearings is off, it really causes massive havoc on the vehicle itself. I'm just saying. So a mechanic has mentioned to me, I mean, I've listened to the humans when I've encountered problems in the field with a plethora of different whatever. Now here's about this Starlink controversy.
It is a controversy that is literally up in the air. Communication satellites launched by Elon Musk's Starlink service have come to the rescue for Ukraine and its military. But will the company keep providing the service? We'll look.
Now, for me, in my female journey, where real, serious, traumatic, and whatever results have happened, there is a more recent tragic event that happened that looks something like this. If this is the brain scan, this, and the brain waves being like, I always say them out of order. I think it's theta, delta, alpha, beta, I don't know, and medical field has their own, I mean, the professional neuroscientists. Again, I'm not up at your league. I've been locked in a series of rooms with dead ends as the outcome, but I've heard some of you speak in your field. So I know those 4 words in their magical order unlock like some level that you all gather around, and you're important. You just, again, a piece of a much larger conversation. I mean, everybody's important in their own whatever, but like individually, there's anyhow. So that's where this comes up, is some kind of advanced weaponry, energy weaponry that was used the night that I called Houston in the field and couldn't put words together. But he was the only phone number I knew to call, because he's like the only possible, like I don't have confirmation, but he's like, I mean, he called himself a PJ. So he's the only possible Eagle representative I've ever met that I'm aware of. And so he was the only phone number I knew to call. But I didn't know what to say to him because I hadn't talked to him for years. But I wanted him on record with me as my God's witness that something larger than life itself, in like the gods, are messing with me now at such an egregious level of pariahs. Almost like making me like my head like a soft target that they want to just make like target practice on just because they can, which should never be allowed either. But there's a lot that seems to go on and should have never happened, but did. So now deal with it. How? Now this part of the morning television has the reference Chicago, a WBBM, whatever that means. I have no idea, but it's what they put up here as a reference point.
Fall Saturdays may be for college football, Sundays the NFL, but you better make way for pickleball. A tennis, badminton, ping pong hybrid. Pickleball has been around since 1965 when families...
Now, in federal territory, it's a new racket. I mean, again, it's a sport, but sometimes there's racketeering charges. So I don't know, things I've heard in the field. The TV producer land's thrown a whole lot of possibilities out there. I just never know how they weave them into whatever correctly.
Families on Washington's Bainbridge Island created the game on this court to entertain their children. But over the past 4 years, pickleball's suddenly become the fastest growing sport in America, with nearly 5 million playing. Once thought of as an old folks game, there are hundreds of tournaments annually, not to mention pro tours with athletes like Tom Brady and LeBron James, each recently buying franchises in one of the sport's upstart leagues. Pickleball has garnered an almost obsessive devotion from players of...
Now, I find that so interesting. The 2 names is James and Brady that she throws out there as name drops. I'm just like, is that like mic drop? I don't know. These are the things the trendy humans keep bringing up in their circus clowns. Which they also have on today, about like a whole front lawn full of circus clowns, like the really scary kind, and the kids having to walk up to the house to get their candy. And it's just like,
all ages and skill levels. We decided to hit the courts and find out why.
so again, I'm not doing an advertisement for these things, but it's up there. So is the reference to Hans and Franz and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So again, I'm done with my part of whatever this is as a reference to, I got the message this morning, being October 22nd, 2022. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. Oh, and the other thing is they put on I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched the beginning of GMA 3 yesterday. And there's some politician on there saying that at the border, I think she's in Arizona, she said that there was federal abandoned property. And I'm like, what is that in reference to? How can the feds abandon property? So I want to put that up because that really concerns me. And like, what message are they effectuating, or like what part of investigations are they in order to like bring forth a conclusive like message of some sort for learning purposes as I go through this? Of like, I can't keep track of all the children. Really, I can't, but I'm trying my best to figure out with like witches and witch hunts and the wizarding community. I'm trying my best to figure out what pariah landed on what square that broke up the dance company I was supposed to be in. This GMA reference is S3E30, and it was Friday, 10/21 is when they made this announcement. Hold on. All right, so they set themselves up, GMA 3 at ASU. And this is what they had to say.
Welcome back to GMA 3. Earlier in the show, we spoke with Arizona Democratic gubernatorial candidate Katie Huff, and now her GOP opponent Carrie Lake takes center stage.
Yes, joining us now. Look who we got here. Friend of the program, ABC Chief, ABC News Chief, Washington correspondent John McCarl.
He's a chief of something, and it's important.
It's so weird to have you on the show without the backdrop of all your Emmys. That's how you usually are on the show.
Exactly. I wanted to bring them, but they were
Well, this is a rising star in the Republican Party. You got this chance to sit down and see why so many people think she is such a star.
Look, Carrie Lake is an absolute star of the MAGA movement. One very big supporter, big ally of Donald Trump told me she is the future of our movement. We talked about a lot of her policy positions, including what she wants to do at the border. You've put forth a very aggressive plan on the border. And one of the things you've talked about is finishing the wall, the parts of the wall that weren't completed under President Trump. How does that work, given that so much of that border area is either tribal land or federal land? What do you do about
Well, hopefully you've read through my policy, and we're going to, on day one, issue a declaration of invasion. And we're going to take back control from the federal government of our border. They have ceded control to the worst people in the world.
What does that mean? So you're going to literally you're going to say out with the border patrol, and you're just going to take
No, we're going to work around them. We're going to work around them. We're going to put people in key areas of the border, and we're going to stop people from coming.
Now, is she part of the pariah political movement? Because again, I'm in a broken seat. I'm in a broken position. They broke two principal single dancers with a eagle and then a double-headed watchbird and a rocket kickline team. They broke that apart, and we're 23 years into the future of whenever that happened. It's between 1978 and 2022. It happened that they broke up and pariah grew. And now this is some of, what is this? Them explaining how they did it?
Across. We're going to work with the legislature to redefine what abandoned federal property is. Right now we have millions of dollars of materials to build a border wall sitting on the border, wasting away, and we're not using it. We, the taxpayers, paid for that. And so we're going to take that back, and we're going to start constructing the wall.
How much is it going to cost you? I know you have some of the material that's still there, but what's your estimate on how much that's going to cost?
It varies. Depending on how it's done, it varies. It can be anywhere from $250 million to even more than that. But we're going to find a way to do it.
And you're...
There's about 20 to 27 miles to be completed, and we're going to get working on it. And it'll be really interesting.
There's a lot more that doesn't have a wall, though. There's like 300 and some miles. What do you figure that?
My border plan calls for finishing President Trump's border wall project, which is about 27 additional miles. There are going to be challenges, and we'll work with the tribes, but we will not allow drugs to be flowing through anywhere.
Lake was particularly eager to talk about her education proposals.
I'm really concerned about the quality of education we have. We're thrilled we have ESA for All, which is basically we fund the student and not the system, the school system. That's how our tax money is. We pay tax money.
Follows the student.
Yeah, we pay.
I don't know if that's just Arizona. Again, work in progress government is what's in front of my school at the moment for my son, for the youngest one here in Queens. And I'm trying to work through a whole lot of local municipality. Like, I'm just really confused as to what is feeding off of what in this river.
We pay taxes into our education to fund the
Or
students.
tributary.
And so we're thrilled that we have education freedom here. We're a state that's been a pioneer in that. Our families can choose what school they want to go to, and now they can get the money and take it to that school. If it's a private school, if it's a parochial school, if it's a charter school, a micro school, a homeschool. Our families have choices finally. We're putting the power back into the family where it should be. But we want to additionally do a dual track education. After 10th grade, our students get to decide if they want to go off to college, that's great. They continue along that path and they take college prep courses. Or if they want to take trade skill training, vocational training, or career certification right there in high school so they're ready for the high-paying jobs that are out there.
As governor, and I know you'd have to work with others on this, but as governor, would you seek to change the election laws? And specifically, would you look to limit early voting and mail-in voting in Arizona?
I don't know exactly how we'll do it, but we will secure our elections, restore faith in our elections, make sure our elections are honest and transparent. And I will work with the legislature tirelessly to make sure that happens. I want every voter, whether they be Democrat.
And again, I'm not doing like campaign stuff here, but like that's just a synopsis of one of the people who have benefited and gotten into a conversation, a group, a network, a seat, a state, that knows how things are working and knows where to go after something called a federal abandoned property. Why did the federal government abandon any property? I'm not following, and I have no access to question. So I don't even know who to direct the questions to, and when I get the answers of the rhetorical, where do I put them? Because I know somebody in Two-Headed Bird knows these things. I would assume that they would. It's just something happened at the dance company is what it feels like. If I have to speak in, like, I don't have a real dance company. I don't know how to open a dance company. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what the professionals think it looks like or how their careers took off. It's just really easy with watching some of the dance, and I don't even watch Dancing with the Stars, but I hear they put up Sam Champion, a weatherman from my local area. He's local and regional and territorial. They put him up on this national dancing competition. I know there's significance there, and he's from Channel 7. So, anyhow, just speaking on solo dance woman to a perhaps principal or a professional. I mean, again, I say intelligent enough for the two of us, because really, like, this was not on my life, like, bucket list. It's just things have gone so traumatically, drastically wrong. I don't know how else to hand raise safely and say, no, this doesn't look, feel, sound, or anything correct. And this is not a good use of my time. And there's been no benefits here for me. So I'm a little confused as to how to get to where I was needed, wanted, and intended. And what that process looks like. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.